So if you're somebody that wants to be more present in the moments that matter, if you want to be able to make the little moments more impactful and meaningful, or you find yourself constantly anxious about the future or depressed about the past, then today I'm going to share 3 simple things that you can do to be more present today. And like any good, I don't know, what would you call this, a tutorial? I've got to give you a bit more context. I've got a story I want to share with you, and it's actually about my first experience of oneness. Now, recently I've been really pulling apart going, and this I guess is sort of a bit of behind the scenes to some degree, but really thinking about like what is it that the people that I work with, and I've worked with thousands now, but the people that I really work with, what is it that they get that's tangible, that people actually want, that I'm really good at delivering? And it's not so much that I do the work, but more about being, I guess, a conduit or a container for the work that they do. And a lot of the times I've been pulled apart to like it's calm mind, strong body for good, which in a way, of course it is. That's really speaking to generational health, which in all fairness, that was exactly what my TED talk was about. And this idea of generational health is about having a calm mind, strong body, and far more than that, for good, as in for generations. And the reason being is because the question really isn't, am I passing down my values, beliefs, behaviors, systems, culture? The question is, what are the values, beliefs, behaviors, systems, and culture that I'm passing down? Because that's what you are doing, and you inherited some from your parents. So it's unavoidable to some degree. So that's nice, but I've never really had people go, yeah, I want to have a calm mind and strong body. And so I pull this part even further, and I realize the things that I do for me and that I teach so many other people to do is to be present and perform under pressure. It's like those are the 2 core things. And really, I'm yet to meet someone that doesn't want to be present and doesn't want to perform when it matters the most. And so if you're interested in those 2 things, then absolutely stick around. Or you can also join one of my free trainings, which is literally presence under pressure. And what that's going to do is teach you 3 key frameworks, which is different to today, but 3 key frameworks that a lot of the high performers that I work with, from professional athletes to executives and special forces recruits, use on a daily basis to perform at the best. And ways that you can do it in day-to-day life. Because really my mission more than anything is making presence, performance, and to a greater extent, practical spirituality accessible and available for day-to-day life. And when people do that, they actually enrich their lives. They experience a greater depth in their life. They can perform when it matters most and perform under pressure and perform at their peak in body and mind. So more than anything, that's what this is associated with. Today, I'm going to share with you my first experience of presence. And I actually wrote a Substack about it. So if you like reading and you want to get more content and more information around all this stuff that I do share, then absolutely subscribe to my Substack. I treat that like my Twitter, and I also put long form blogs on there 2 to 4 times a week. So I'm going to be reading off the Substack here in front of me, but I'm going to be doing a bit more than that. I'm going to be pulling it apart and adding in my 2 cents as I go along as well. But as I mentioned, with a bit of context for presence, then I'm going to give you 3 key frameworks that you can use straight away to be able to actually apply this and be more present in your day-to-day life. But first, let's share my first experience of presenceness, which is interesting because I didn't know it at the time, right? And recently I was reflecting my first experience of complete presenceness. And when I look back on my life at the moment, one of the times this really stood out was when I had a psychedelic trip with a shaman. And I know, long hair, beard, psychedelic trip, I understand what it looked like, but I did, and it was great, and it was 5-MeO DMT, and if you're not familiar with that, basically it's what you get off a toad when you lick it, apparently. I didn't have to do that, thank God. But the experience I had there, I realized I've tasted that previously, and Ken Wilber has a book called One Taste, funnily enough, and the interesting thing around that is that I actually tasted this exact same experience when I was 13 without actually tasting on my tongue. The taste was the actual experience. And so my first experience of oneness and of unity was when I was 13. At the time, for context, I was a single child with a single and mostly absent mother. Now, there's many conversations and stories. I've shared many insights around this as well. But the reality is I went from a family of 6 at the age of 8 to the age of 11 and 10, or 10 and 11 being myself and my mum. And that was it. And I remember for the most part feeling deeply isolated. It was the back end of a 4-year stint in a small country town. I grew up in Australia's capital up until I was 10, then moved down to a small country town on the far south coast of New South Wales and lived there for 4 years with mum. And this particular event occurred in a backyard with no psychedelics. There was nothing, I didn't have under the influence or anything at all. It was not like that, but that was my 5th home in 4 years there. 5th home in 4 years in a small country town. And my time there was marked by domestic violence, alcoholism, and emotional neglect. I didn't know it at the time. As I said it here, I didn't realize it then, but I was full of pain, like emotional pain. And I was a young teenage boy coming into puberty. I had no healthy male role models. Now, this sounds rough because my dad actually read this on Facebook and he's like, "I'm sorry, son." But like, people just living their own lives. Like, dad's a good man. He was a good man. He just lived in Sydney. He lived 700 kilometers away, or however far away it is. And so it wasn't, I don't hold anything against him for that. It's just that I didn't have access to any healthy male role models. And a lot of the guys that mum chose were not healthy male role models. And so I didn't know how much that affected me at the time, because it was normal, or what I thought was normal. But it was normal life for me. And so I had plenty of exposure to violence and alcohol, and no known way to communicate or express what I was carrying at the time. I wasn't just alone, I was lonely. Now, just quickly, I share this not because I think it's rare. I share this because I think it's common. I share this because as I've shared over the years, I know there's people that relate to this. So I share this in hope that there's someone going to watch this and be like, "Oh, fuck yeah, I get this. I relate to it." And I want to be able to perform my best. And I want to be able to change my, let's call it, generational code. And I want to be present for the rest of my life so that I can actually enjoy my life. That's who this is written for. I remember laying amongst the grass in the backyard of the rental home I was living at the time, just lying there face to face with the infinite blue sky. It was clear. It was a warm day. The sun was kissing my face. I remember having my eyes closed. And I remember being swallowed by the earth below me. I just remember this like quicksand, as if the earth and the grass was made of quicksand. I was just swallowed. And at this stage of my life, I felt like I kind of had no power. So letting go of what little power I had to something greater kind of felt right and made sense at the time. And in that moment, I experienced complete oneness with me, the earth, the sky, and beyond. At the time, I couldn't have told you where I ended and the sky began. Nothing else existed. Nothing but the whole of everything, that is. And in that moment, I was no longer lonely, which was such a profound feeling at the time, to have all this and then just be like, how could I ever be lonely? I remember this moment with peak clarity. I go back to it from time to time, and I drink from this more now than ever. And I'll tell you why in a moment. But this was my first taste of oneness, like floating, timeless, not painless, but more like I was with my pain rather than I was had by my pain. There is a key difference when people go, "This is my pain," rather than like, "Oh, there's this pain that I experience." I've spoken to someone recently that I know very dearly, and they talk about my pain. Well, my pain. It's like, who would you be without the pain? Who would you be without the pain? Who could you be without the pain? One of the challenges is that they associate so much to it that, and this was said by George Goodriff, one of the last things people let go of is their suffering. Because who would they be otherwise? How could they relate to the world? It's how they've related with the world. It's how they've got what they want. So you take that away, then who are they? So I didn't get rid of my pain. I was sitting with it. Hey there, if you're enjoying this content, I know you're going to love my free training. I run a free 90-minute workshop. It's called the Peak and Flow Workshop, and I'm going to teach you the 3 key frameworks that I use with my high-performing clients that helps them perform under pressure, build a calm mind and a strong body for good, and more importantly, be present in the moments that matter. So if you're interested, you want to jump on, there should be a link in the description here. 90 minutes free training. I'm going to teach you those 3 key frameworks. We're going to do a bit of a workshop to make sure it's practical for your life, and you'll have some key takeaways to use straight away. Let's let's get back to the video. It was like this allowing, a surrender, a knowing older than myself. Now, I didn't have the language at 13 to explain all of this. This came later. But it was an allowing, a surrender, and only the last couple of years that I realized that that knowing was older than every cell in my body, in a way. This was presence, peace, it was acceptance. But like many do, I thought it was just some silly thing that felt good, like a waste of time. I was just dilly-dallying as a kid, basically. Or I wasn't aware at the time that I was actually communicating with the stars, right? Listening to the grass, existing as a part of the universe that has always existed, right? It took me 20 more years to understand this moment again. The weight of it, or rather the weightlessness of it. And then to learn how to bring this into each and every moment. Not that I always do, but the knowing that I always can. And so can you, right? That's the whole point. Is that our capacity to be present doesn't mean we don't think of the future or reflect on the past. That's important. It means we don't live in the future or live in the past, because the future is only reserved for those that can live in the present. So the more that we actually live in the present, the more we get to actually experience our life, because life is not in the planning or not in the reflecting, but both of those things are crucial. I found this experience and the experiences since to be a perfectly imperfect return to home. And when I talk about home, I'm talking about your home here, right? Who you are, the original face, who you are before the world told you who to be, all of that stuff, the unbecoming, right? And you get to experience this not by rejecting your thoughts, but by accepting that they are just thoughts. The difficulty is so many people live behind their eyes and they see their thoughts similar to the pain as them. That's me. I am my thoughts. And you're just not. You're just so much more than that. And thoughts come and go. And, you know, the clouds are not the sky. They're simply passing by the sky. And if we're not paying attention, so does the present moment, because our thoughts are simply just passing by. And if that's all we focus on, we actually are not living here in the present moment as it is. Because the present moment is always here. So I'm going to leave you with this, and then I'm going to get into, I've got a couple of little words here, then I'm going to get into those three things for you. What's getting in your way of meeting this very moment? I commonly talk about meet the moment. And what that means is that you bring all of you, your whole capacity and potential into this very moment now. That is your actual potential. Your potential isn't in the future. It's in your capacity that you can access in this present moment. And when you stack that on moment, then you get to access your potential in the future because you continually access your potential in the moment. So what is getting in your way of meeting this very moment? And why are you holding on to that? In what way is that serving you? There's a couple of beautiful quotes here that I love, and they're by Rumi. The first one, it simply says, we are all just walking each other home. And I love that. And maybe that's for another podcast, I'll unpack that, because there is so much depth and nuance and simplicity and beauty in that simple sentence. We are all just walking each other home. He also said, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. Where the soul lies down in the grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. And I believe that was the field I laid in. I'm certain of it. So if you care to walk with me, or do you care to meet me there? Big love, D. So that was the Substack post that I wrote about my first experience of oneness. And what really came from that was this understanding that this is available to all people at all times. Now, there's this concept of an ascending God or a descending God. The ascending God is within religion or whatever, and that's not to say I'm neutral when it comes to religion. I do not follow any particular religion whatsoever. Although people do, they do, whatever. But the idea of an ascending God is that if you're good in this lifetime, you'll ascend to this godsend, to this heaven. Whereas a descending God is you have access right here and now to everything that heaven can offer. And there's this beautiful, beautiful line that I remember. I spoke to my father-in-law about it over the fire the other week. And he couldn't stop laughing. He grew up a Christian, right? And I said, I remember this concept, and it simply said, what happens is that if you die and you go to heaven, and at the pearly gates you meet God, I know it's meant to be Paul or someone, but let's say it's God, and you meet God, and he greets you, smiles, and says, so, how is heaven? And he's referring to the very experience that you're having right now. And that stayed with me multiple times. Whenever I get ahead of myself, whether I start bothering myself about what's going on, I simply be like, well, mate, why can't heaven be here now in this descending God experience? So in order to do that, though, we need to be present. So here are 3 steps to be more present, and there's a whole lot more in this anyway, but here are 3 steps to be present. One is you've got to get into your body. Now, presence live in your body, it's not in your head, but it's not in rejection of your head either, because it's this weird conundrum where people want to reject their head to be living in their heart. It's like, no. It's in your open heart, open head, open gut. If you live in those 3 open areas, then that is where you can fully experience presenceness. The head doesn't get in the way as much as the heart or the gut doesn't, so to speak. And I'm talking about your body when I talk about gut. But if you're able to get into your body, it means that you can't be taking into the future or into the past. And this is why breath work is such a powerful experience, because your breath is always here. It's always present. The other thing here is, number 2, observe, don't overthink. Don't do the thing, right? But observe. It should say observe, don't judge, because thinking and judging is basically hand in hand with what I'm getting at. But we start to overthink and judge, but there's this beautiful space that we can move into if we choose to practice it, which is just to perceive, just to observe something, to observe the cloud without judging it as right or wrong or good and bad or this shape, that shape, but just to observe like a child. And so we've got 1, get into your body, follow your breath, feel your feet on the ground. 2, observe, perceive. As soon as you catch judgment or overthinking, you simply come back to just observing and perceiving. And the third one is to ask yourself one question. What am I holding on to that is taking me away from this current moment? What's taking me into the future? What's taking me back to the past? And then, in what way could that possibly serve me? And on that note, team, I'm done. If you enjoyed this podcast or this YouTube video, depending where you're listening or watching it, then either A, subscribe, like, look, do whatever you want to do. It's your life. But it'd be great if you could like and subscribe, because there's going to be a heap more of this type of content anyway, let alone the near 1,000 I've already done over a period of time. However, if you want to learn more about how to be present and perform under pressure, follow along, drop us a DM. I'd love to hear from you. And also, like I mentioned earlier in this, if you find this stuff interesting, you should definitely jump on either A, my peak program, 16-week intensive that teaches you all about all this sort of stuff, or B, jump on one of my free trainings where I'm going to teach you about presence under pressure and the 3 things you can do to be able to perform when it matters the most. Otherwise, I'm out. Peace and pizza. I'll see you soon.